So, welcome to today, which is using human design as a marketing tool for women solopreneurs. I'm so happy you're here, and I'm also going to send you a recording afterwards. And it's going to be brief because we're all very busy. And so I'm just going to tell you a bit about what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what human design is, just very briefly, and then talking about how we can use it as a marketing tool for women solopreneurs. And then I'll turn the recording off, and there'll be some questions, but we'll see if I can figure out how to do that because we have some technical problems. And we're the Zooms. So if you feel like writing in the chat, who here knows something about human design and who here knows nothing, just so I know. And if you don't feel like writing, that's fine. There's no obligation to write anything at all. I just want to say that I'm going to go over a few very small little basics about human design, not a whole lot because we're limited time. And if there's something you don't understand, just remember that it's like everything that's new. With time, you'll understand it more, and you can always ask me questions afterwards. So I'm always here. Always feel free to write me afterwards. WhatsApp, by email, whatever, through my website, wherever it is that you want. So for those who don't know something about human design, it's a combination of different modalities, including the astrology, the I Ching, the chakra system, other modalities as well. And the reason why I like it so very much is because it's very practical. I'm a very practical person. I like things that you can use. And so it doesn't just talk about tendencies, it also gives tips based on your personal chart, like what your design is, as they say, and then human design, what your design is, how you can make decisions more effectively, and how you can communicate better. And that's where marketing comes in, because marketing is just communication after all. And how to optimize your energy. And I'm just looking what's written in the chat here. If I missed something, I apologize. And just, you can ask me afterwards if I missed one of your questions. And human design, another reason why I like it is that on the one hand, it's very complex. But on the other hand, if you use just a few simple concepts and apply them to your life will be transformed. And so you don't have to study for years and years and years. You really don't. And what we're going to be talking about today is how women solopreneurs can use human design for marketing, and talking about a little tiny little snapshot because it's easier to eat in small bites and we have limited time. But what we're going to talk about is one aspect of human design. One aspect of human design is your type in human design. There's 5 different types, and we're going to talk about 2 of them, generators and projectors. And I know that sounds jargony. Don't worry. If it does, you'll catch on. And how they can use human design to better their marketing. If you don't yet know what your chart is, you can either talk to me. I'd be happy to do your chart for you. And there's also a million places on the internet. Just do a search for free chart human design and you'll get it. But feel free to talk to me. I'd be delighted to do your chart for you. I love seeing people's charts. And so whatever feels right to you. But for human design, it's important in order to use the tips to know what your chart is like. And I'm going to use examples of 3 actual women that I know personally. I've changed their names and sort of clouded what they do, so they're anonymous. And let's get going. So the first person, her name is Anna, not her real name, but that's her name for today. And what she does for her job, she sells natural supplements for women. And her human design type is a generator. That picture is what her chart looks like in human design. And it looks a little bit odd, I know, but that's what a human design chart looks like. I've also written a few other things about her, what her authority is and what her centers are. Don't worry about that for now. What's important for you to know is that she's a generator. And for generators, there are certain general tips that are good for you to know for marketing. I'm just going to go back a few little slides. The first thing about generators, which is amazing, is that generators have tons of energy. They have constant access to energy. So for the marketing, they can be in a lot of channels, they can do a lot of marketing. One thing for a generator to be aware of is that because they have so much energy, sometimes they might have a tendency to like waste it or disperse it in places that aren't the most useful for them. And that's something to pay attention to, because we know that no matter how much energy we have, we feel better and more vitalized when we're spending it in the places that are good for us personally. And so as a generator, even though you might have a lot of energy, if you're spending it on channels for marketing that don't suit you, you're still going to feel less energetic. And another thing is, okay, so you have tons of energy, but why not spend it all on things that are really useful for you? So how do generators use the human design framework to decide how to market better? So I was mentioning earlier, the human design is really good to teach you how to communicate and how to make decisions. So part of marketing is deciding what to market, what platform to use, all of that. And generators have a specific way to optimize their decision making. Now, it's not to say that if they decide otherwise, it's not going to work, but it means if they want to have the most consistent way of deciding that works for them, most of all, there's a certain way to do it. And this is what it is. It's simple, but it takes a while to practice if you're not used to it. The first point is that generators are most effective when they respond to what's around them, not to make things up in their head, but to see what's around, to check in with themselves to see if it suits them. And if it does, then to go ahead. Might sound a little bit gobbledygook. Let's give an example for our first generator, Anna. So we already said she sells natural supplements for women and she's a generator. So let's start going about what you mean by noticing. So perhaps she notices an article talking about TikTok is really useful. And one of her clients says to her or asks about supplements to help women in pregnancy and help them feel more vital. So those are things that she's noticed in her environment. And you can notice a million of things in your environment. It can be through what you're going for a walk, what signs you see, people talking to you, what you're reading, movies that you see, anything that you notice in your environment. That's the first step for a generator. Now, second, just because it's in your environment does not mean it's right for you. So the thing is with human design, indeed, everything I do, everything I believe is to listen to our inner voice better, to make it more clear and focused. And human design is one of those routes. So the way a generator does that, there's actually different ways for different generators, but the core way for a generator to check in to see whether what they're noticing is right for them is to check in with their sacral or their gut or their belly, to ask it a yes/no question and get a response. And so back to Anna, she might say, after noticing an article on TikTok or a podcast on TikTok, to ask yourself, is TikTok right for me to use for marketing right now? And listen to her gut. Don't listen to her mind. Don't listen to sentences. It's yes, no, or it's a body sensation, affirmative, negative. Everybody's slightly different. It'll take a little time for you to figure it out if you haven't already started using it. And I'd really encourage you to do it. I also have a workbook on this. You can always ask me for it. I'd be happy to give it to you. Same thing about using supplements for women for pregnancy. Check in with herself. She notices it because her client has asked her. So ask her gut, is this a good thing for me to be doing? And then get the response. And if it's no, then she can go on to something else she's noticed. And if it's a yes, then go ahead with that. And so this is something, if you're a generator, it's really useful to practice. For people I work with, I suggest when you're starting out, at least 5 times a day, just to check in and work that muscle, because as a marketing tool, it'll help you get on the right path, the right platform, and the right content. And for generators, how you attract clients through your marketing is to be responding to these things. responding by noticing, checking in, and then doing it, and being consistent. And because you have a lot of energy as a generator, you're able to be consistent in the long run, and that's how the right people get attracted to you. So that's one of the 5 types of generator. I have another example of a different generator here as well for you. Just one more thing first. In terms of noticing things, as you know, where we put our attention is what shows up in our life. And so the more you put your attention to noticing things that you can respond to, the more you'll see them. And as a generator, you can also create more things through polls or surveys or asking for client feedback. Now, before writing out a poll, I would suggest checking into yourself. Check with your sacral. Ask, should I do a poll on this, to get a yes, no answer, so you don't spend time and energy doing something that's not right for you. But create more things that you can respond to, and you'll have more fodder to work with for your marketing. And to stress, as a generator, your job is to respond to things. It's not to make up things in your head. In our society, we're taught to make things up in your head, and some human design types do that, but not you as a generator. So I think I brought that point enough. So let's go on to our next generator, who is Heather, and she's a coach. She's also a generator. This is her chart, and just to go back to Anna's, you can see it's very different from Anna's chart. However, she's also a generator. What makes her a generator, just so you know, is that red square on her chart. All of those shapes are called centers in human design. And when they're colored in, they're called a defined center. And it means you have consistent access to that energy. And when they're white, you have access to that energy in different times, in different situations. So every single generator has that red square colored in. That square includes the energy of life force energy. And that's why generators have so much energy, because they have consistent access to that life force energy. So Heather is also a generator. She's a coach. So she has the same basic strategy for making decisions as Anna does, which is to notice what's happening around her, check in with her sacral center, and then if she gets a yes, then to go ahead and respond. However, if you see that brown triangle that's colored in on her chart, Anna doesn't have that. Now Heather does, and that adds another element. In human design, that is your solar plexus center, and it's the root, among other things, of emotions. So this means that Heather feels a lot of emotions all the time, ups and downs and ups and downs. And for a generator, for all of us who have that center colored in, and about half of us do, what she would do before checking with her sacral center, to the extent possible, she would make sure her emotions are at a level keel. And that will help her have a more accurate decision. So she would notice what's around her, wait to the extent possible for her emotions to be level, check in with herself, and then respond. And I know that in our society, speed is often valued above all. And people say, well, we don't have time to wait. We don't always, but we do more than we think. I also have that center colored in myself. And I have noticed as time progresses that I'm realizing I can take more and more time to answer questions, because the longer I wait for my emotions to be at a level keel, the better my decisions are. And that often outweighs any disadvantage of a delay. But it's a matter of checking it out for yourself. Everything with human design, and I believe in most things in life, is checking it out for yourself and seeing what works for you. So that is how Heather makes decisions as a generator, with it's called emotional authority. Now, I want to just I said I was going to mention about types and how you use that for human design for your marketing. I want to mention one more small thing about the centers, so you can see how there are a lot of different layers of how you can use human design to help you market. So again, Heather has her emotions center defined. It means that she has consistent access to her emotions. And so what could help her as well in her marketing is it'd be easy for her to pull an emotional appeal to her marketing, to tell stories with emotional appeal. And we all know that that can be very compelling. Now, that is not to say that Anna can't use emotions, but she needs to be a bit more strategic how she accesses that energy. She still can, no problem. But for Heather, it comes more naturally and more easily. And so something that she could do a lot more easily by herself. So that is Heather and that is Anna. I now want to talk about our third woman that we're talking about. She's a solopreneur and another person I know. She's also a coach like Heather is, but her type is different from Anna and Heather. She is what is called a projector. And it's one of the 5 types. And a projector is different from a generator in many ways. Their strategy is very, very different in terms of marketing. First of all, projectors, if you look at Jill's chart, if you remember, both Anna and Heather had the square in the middle of their chart colored in red. And Jill doesn't, because projectors don't have it colored in. And that square had to do with your life force energy, which is why generators have a lot of energy. And Heather and Anna have a lot of energy for their marketing. And Jill has less consistent energy to this energy. So she needs to conserve her energy more than others might have to do. Just a background for her. So this can mean a couple things. First of all, it means that it might be useful for her to outsource things more. I mean, this is good for a lot of people, but even more for non-energy types, as they're called in human design, because you have to be more careful with how you spend your energy. Another thing is her strategy of how to decide on her platform and decide on her content is different as a projector than a generator. For generator, we've gone over it. Notice, ask yourself, and then respond. A projector is different. They don't respond. They don't check in with their gut. What they do is they share their joy and wisdom. They tune into themselves. Different projectors have different ways of doing this. And they share what lights them up. And it's a useful thing that distinguishes them. But more than that, what lights them up and what they love and what they have passion about. And through this, people start to recognize projectors. And so that is their most successful strategy. And I just want to back up here and say that if a generator uses a different strategy than what is recommended, or a projector uses a different strategy than what is recommended, it doesn't mean they're never going to be successful. Sometimes they'll be incredibly successful. But what these strategies are ways to more consistently be successful. And that's part of optimizing your energy. And that's part of what I like about human design. It teaches us how to be more effective and more efficient with our energy. So we use it better and more successfully, the things that help us most of all. So again, what Jill's strategy is to share what lights her up. So let's compare her. Let's just, for the sake of argument, compare her strategy with a generator. So let's say that Jill, instead of being a coach, she also sold supplements like Anna. So whereas Anna would read podcasts or listen to podcasts, read articles, talk to her clients, do surveys to get ideas and notice things, check in with herself, and then respond, Jill would do what she wants to do. For instance, if she's an athlete, it might interest her how she could use supplements to help women recover from exercise. And then she would do a podcast about that. She'd write about it, whatever interested her. So that is a projector strategy. Share your joy and passion, and people ultimately will recognize you, the right people, and invite you in, and then you will work together. Now we are almost a half an hour, so I'm just going to make a few more comments and then I'm going to turn the recording off and we can have questions. But I just want to mention something that's very, very important to me about human design, which is that as I work with human design, sorry that I just hit my mic there, I use human design to help us strengthen ourselves and not to restrict ourselves. I once had someone come in. She had had a human design reading done with somebody else, and this person had told her that based on her particular design, it'd be best for her not to do what she wants to do. And I just look at human design differently. I look at it as it tells us what our strengths are. And through our strengths, we know what we can do best. And it also tells us what we're less strong at so we can compensate for that. Like, for instance, projectors. Projectors have less energy. So instead of saying, say there's a projector who wants to market on 10 different channels, it's not say human design, as I work with it, doesn't say you can't do that because you have less energy as a projector. Rather, it says, okay, you're a projector, you have less energy, so how about outsourcing a little bit so you can be on those 10 channels? So that's something that's really important to me, is that to the extent that we're tuning into ourselves and listening to our inner voice, our human design chart only supports what we do. And so there's many questions, but first of all, I just want to mention two little quick things. The first is I want to do future Zooms. And next one, try to have it so people can talk a little bit easier. I said I had real technical issues today. And hopefully once a month, I'm thinking about once a month. And if you have questions you want me to answer, please write me. And to the extent I can, I'll answer your questions. If you want me to look at your chart with a question about marketing or anything else, talk to me. I'm going to talk about human design and also Bach flowers and maybe other things also. If other things interest you, just talk to me. That's the whole point. This is for you. I'm going to make them brief. This is already 31 minutes, so I'm going to try to make it briefer and talk less. And then the last thing, just for people who aren't here, just 2 seconds about, oh, this is how to reach me. WhatsApp is usually best, but I also have my email here, sorry, my website. I'm going to also give you this presentation so you have it, so you have everything you could possibly want. And then just 1 second about me. My name is Satsang, and I am a Bach flower practitioner. I study Bach flowers at the Bach Center in England, which is the world center of Bach flowers, and I'm also a human design coach. And I mainly help women and their families and their pets, cats and dogs, with Bach flowers. Basically, clear, overcome overwhelm, find clarity, get rid of obstacles from your path so you can listen to your inner voice clear and be more empowered. So I am going to turn off the recording. I thank you, anybody who's here just for the listen to the recording and not here. Thank you for listening. And let's just turn this off.